Do you wonder if you are eating the right foods to produce enough milk or to provide the right nutrients for your baby as you are lactating? A lot of people wonder this, and a lot of lactation professionals and perinatal health professionals get asked this question. Today, we're going to dive into this topic and talk about how the lactating parent's nutrition does and does not impact milk production, because so many people do worry about this topic. And I'm here, as usual, to ease your mind and to take one less worry off your plate as a lactating parent. So let's get into it. When I began breastfeeding, I was blindsided by how difficult it was. Having known only a handful of people who had ever done it and only seeing it up close a couple of times, I had a huge learning curve. Since then, I've become a doula, a childbirth educator, and an internationally board-certified lactation consultant, or an IBCLC. I'm your host, Lo Nigrosh, and I welcome you to the Milk Making Minutes, where we explore the systemic, medical, and cultural barriers that make feeding our babies so difficult, so that you know your baby feeding struggles are not your fault, and your triumphs really are the miracles you feel they are. Okay, so first of all, a lot of people have this idea that milk production is based off of what you eat and drink, and that would make a lot of sense. Just thinking about the body, what comes in must go out sort of concept, but that's not actually how milk production works. And anybody who has met with a lactation consultant or done any amount of research about milk production probably knows a little bit about this myth. But often when you go on to big Facebook groups and start asking, how can I increase my milk supply? People say, drink more water, eat more oats, drink blue Gatorade, and people start to think that is the primary way to increase their milk production. But that is definitely not the first step you should be taking to increase your milk production, because milk production is based on autocrine hormonal control, and it's all happening at the mammary tissue, from the mammary glands to the pituitary gland hormonally. And it's based on how much milk is taken out of the mammary glands. And that sends a signal to the pituitary gland on how much milk should then be created or produced. Now, there have been studies done in areas where there is famine, in areas where there is malnourishment. And in these areas, parents are still able to produce enough milk for their baby. It is only when famine begins to happen for many weeks in a row that we start to see a decline in milk production, and we start to see milk production suffering as a result of malnourishment in the parents. You do need a certain amount of calories to be able to feed your baby, but also milk production can happen from the stores in your body as well. So the stores that are built up during pregnancy can also contribute to your milk production. So it's a very complicated system, and you don't have to worry too much about your nutrition. However, it is very good for parents to be paying attention to their nutrition, because when you feel nutritionally satisfied, you are going to feel your best, both mentally and physically, and you will be best prepared to take care of your baby. So it's not just about the milk. And you hear me saying this all the time when I am talking with my clients and on this podcast, when I am helping them make decisions about their babies and their lives, I am not just looking at what is the best thing to do for milk production. I am helping them look at what is the best thing for you to do for your life in this moment so that you can be as healthy as possible, both mentally and physically, to ease your mind, to have less anxiety, to feel more freedom, more happiness, to feel the most like yourself that you can, to have the life that you most imagined you would have at this time. And the biggest challenge for nursing families is finding the time for food prep and preparation. And I feel this so hard. And it has not gotten easier for me. In fact, it has gotten harder for me now that my kids are almost 10 and almost 6. I feel like when my kids were infants, I could wear them in a carrier and I could still get some food prep done. And now I rely a lot on like frozen foods that are pre-cooked, frozen veggies that I can just throw some olive oil and salt on, really easy stuff that I have just had to come to terms with, that even though I used to enjoy cooking a little bit more, I have got to think about the bottom line because I really do want to spend more time with my kids instead of worrying so much about having delicious home cooked meals all the time. And my husband and I trade off a lot more on cooking than we used to do. And this is what the research shows as well, is that the time to cook, especially in the United States, is just way harder for families with young kids and with babies to find that food prep time. And so what starts to happen is these families, especially nursing parents, start to rely on really easy to grab foods, high carbohydrate foods, snack foods, to just get the calories in, which is totally understandable because you need to eat. And the recommendations for nursing parents, there's no specific caloric recommendations. And if you were to meet with a dietitian or a nutritionist, they might give you a specific caloric count to be meeting, especially if you were trying to lose weight or something. But that is not the route that I recommend that people take. What I recommend that people do, and I have definitely met with several nutritionists about this, and as part of our training, we do have to take nutrition courses. And I recommend that people just pay attention to their hunger signals and eat to hunger and drink to thirst. And of course, this is for the general population. So if you have any specific dietary needs, if you struggle with past eating disorders, then of course you are going to be following the recommendations of your specific providers. But for the general population, the recommendation is to really tune into your own body. If you feel hungry, nourish yourself. If you feel thirsty, drink. And to not pay so much attention to calories. Now, it is known that the average amount of extra calories that a person who is exclusively nursing their baby needs is about 500 calories a day. But that's an average, and every single person's body is different. We can't rely on averages, just like we can't rely on averages for baby weight gain. We can't rely on averages to tell you what your specific caloric needs are going to be when you're nursing. So the best way to know how many calories you're going to need is just to pay attention to when you're hungry. Now, what starts to happen is because we are so worn out, we are so tired, we don't have very much time in the day when we're nursing a baby because it takes up so much time. Who knew that nursing a baby between 8 and 20 times in a day left us so little time for anything else? We start to grab high carbohydrate, easy meals, easy snacks, which of course there's no shame or blame in that. I do it too, but that tends to not fill us up. And sometimes it doesn't really meet our nutritional needs to our satisfaction. And we start to get on this loop of always doing that. And we feel dragged down and we feel tired. And occasionally it can impact our milk supply. It is not the first thing that I go to when somebody is having milk supply issues. But if we have tried everything else and I cannot figure out what is going on, then I might start to look at the nutritional components of the day in and day out food. And I'm not talking about occasional snacks or once a day snacks or weekly stuff. I'm talking about day in and day out. What are you eating that could impact milk supply? A lot of my information that I am talking about today, I am getting from a variety of sources. Nancy Moorbacher's Breastfeeding Answers, A Guide to Helping Families. It's the second edition. Also, I did a lot of going through the archives of nutrition on kellymom.com, so you can do the same. And then motherfood.com had some really good information, and I'll link some of her information on there as well. So if you want to do some digging into nutrition for yourself, you can find some information there. I thought it was really interesting that Nancy Moorbacher points out, and this is something that I say to clients all the time, that nutritional recommendations vary greatly across the globe. And I love when I get to talk to a nursing parent from other countries. And I have several episodes from people from other countries that I've recorded, and I can link those in the show notes. I have a mom from India who was living in America, but her parents came during her postpartum periods almost 18 years ago and provided some of the cultural foods that are expected in the postpartum period. I have an episode from a mom from the Philippines. And in those places, there are definitely foods that are expected to be eaten in the postpartum period because they are meant to be healing. They are meant to induce lactation. They are meant to be good for milk supply. For instance, and I don't know if Sarisha mentioned this in the episode, she is the mom from India. I don't know if she mentioned this in her episode or not. I think she did, but the foods that she mentioned that enhance milk making include pumpkin, sunflower, sesame seeds, as well as rice pudding with milk and sugar. And in China, foods thought to regulate body warmth and fluids are recommended, such as chicken, seaweed soups, cooked papaya, millet, rice, fennel, dill, cumin, caraway, and ginger. And then in North America, we often recommend grains such as oatmeal. And in Mexico, oats and cornmeal simmered in milk are often recommended. And then in Europe, coffee substitutes made from roasted grains, especially barley, are recommended for speeding milk production. And then Nancy Moorbacher mentions a study that was done in Thailand where they had two groups of parents, and they gave one of the groups of parents the cultural foods that are considered galactagogues in the first 72 hours after delivery, and the other group of parents were not given those galactagogues. And the group that was given the galactagogues reported breastfulness at 48 hours, and there were fewer babies that lost more than 7% of their birth weight. And those foods that were considered galactagogues were hot basil, lemon basil, sweet basil, banana blossoms, garlic chives, ginger, and pepper. So you can see that the foods that are mentioned are all foods that are available in those places. You probably know by now that my number one goal is to reduce stress in the perinatal period. So I am so pleased to announce my new partnership with Feast and Fettle, which is a locally prepared home delivery meal service. I was able to select from a list of delicious meal options that got delivered right to my front door for the entire week. Some of the options I chose were zucchini lasagna, roasted carrots, some challah bread, some pork fried rice. Those are just a few of the choices that we had that we devoured. I highly recommend this service as one way to just get one more thing off your plate so that you can spend more time focusing on your family and less time worrying about all the things that you need to do. Just go to feastandfettle.com, which will be linked in the show notes. And if you use my code MILK, M-I-L-K, you can get $30 off your first week. Let Feast and Fettle do the cooking for you. It is recommended that families who are in the postpartum period eat as many whole foods as possible. And I know that we know this isn't new news to anybody. And so I know some people are rolling their eyes and saying, Lo, we know this. It's hard. It's hard for me too. And I love whole foods. It's not hard for me to eat them. It's just hard for me to do the prep to get them done. So some ways that are recommended for families to get this done is just to buy them pre-prepped. I know I can be a little, I guess a nice word for it is frugal. And so I have every intention of doing all the prep myself. But especially in those postpartum periods, if you need to buy the trays of already cut fruit, of already cut veggies, do that. Or ask a friend or a family member who really does want to help you out to do these things for you. So to come over, spend some time chatting with you or not chatting with you, hang out with the baby while you take a nap or take a shower and do the chopping of the veggies that you've already bought, or ask them to buy them if they are willing to do that. So a mother-in-law, a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, somebody who wants to be involved and you haven't given them a job yet. Just have them available, set them out on a tray, things like apples and carrots and peanut butter to dip them in, and nuts already come chopped, so you don't even have to do that. And those are high in protein. That is one of the nutrient components that we really want to be looking at when milk production is low and we haven't been able to figure it out. And next week's episode is going to be all about what we do when milk supply is low and we've tried everything to try to boost milk supply, to improve the latch, to improve pumping output. We've identified if there's a tongue tie or not that might be impacting milk supply, and still milk supply has remained low despite doing everything we can to improve that autocrine control of milk supply. And then maybe we start to look at factors like nutrition. Next week's episode will be all about those nutritional components that we look at. However, I want to ease your mind today and just say that as long as you are eating and drinking to thirst and eating as many nutritional foods as you can, eating the whole foods that you enjoy, the cultural foods that matter to you, that your milk supply is going to be fine. And often, when babies are fussy, the first thing that we think of is the foods that we are eating as the culprit. And I hear so many people start to go down the path of eliminating foods from their diet first before they consult an IBCLC. And I have a whole episode about this. I'll actually link 2 episodes. One is with Dr. Beata, who has specialized in this based on her own experience as a breastfeeding mom. But also I released an episode on whether or not you should be exploring food allergies or intolerances as the cause for baby fussiness, because most likely that is not the cause. It is not where an IBCLC goes to first, even though I hear so many parents who have a really fussy, inconsolable baby, and the first thing they go to is allergies or intolerances when there could be other root causes. And that's related to parent nutrition. And I hear so many parents stressing themselves out over this when it actually could be about something else. And one other hot tip that I actually learned on TikTok, of all places, that I have been doing a lot in my family, which has really helped for me getting the right types of nutrition and for my kids, is to get a big tray in the morning and just load it with tons of different types of food. So I'll often pop a bunch of popcorn, stovetop popcorn, but sometimes it's microwave too. I'll chop a bunch of carrots or do baby carrots. I have one kid who won't eat baby carrots, though. He only likes the big ones. And I'll throw some nuts on there, hoping my kids will eventually eat those. Pickles, chopped apples, clementines. I'll just throw whole clementines on there because my kids like to peel them now. And just a whole variety of foods. I'll even put some like chocolate chips on there, have a little sweet treat or some cookies. And it's a huge tray that my kids can munch on throughout the day, that I can munch on throughout the day. And I've prepared it one time in the morning. And then I'm not constantly being told that my kids are hungry. I'm not constantly hungry. And I know it's nutritious, whole foods for the most part that will fill me and my kids up. And that is great for the perinatal period as well. So there are some tips to help keep you satisfied without losing your mind during the perinatal period. And of course, don't forget to try out Feast and Fettle by going to feastandfettle.com, where you can get $30 off your first week by using my code MILK, milk, and let me know what you think of their really delicious meal offerings. If you are wondering whether or not you should be eliminating certain foods or adding certain foods into your diet, I would love to be the person you have that conversation with as an internationally board certified lactation consultant. These are great conversations to have virtually. So reach out to me, www.quabbinbirthservices.com. I recently just had the most amazing recommendation. One of my clients put a testimonial up on Instagram, and she said this: after just one single consultation with Lo Nigrosh, IBCLC, today I was able to put my 16-month down for his nap without nursing for the first time ever. This is what choosing my mental health looks like. And then underneath the post, she put, thanks for seeing me and for holding space for all mamas who have struggled in any way and at any point to feed their babies. And this just made me feel so good. She was struggling. She reached out to me and asked if we could have a conversation about weaning. And I said, absolutely. We scheduled the consult. We had a 90-minute consult, and we really created a plan that was specific to her needs and her wishes. It was not the kind of information that you could just Google. Otherwise, why would you have a consult with an IBCLC? When I speak with you, it's going to be individualized to your needs. So if you are struggling with nutrition, or with weaning, or with milk supply, I would love to be the person that helps you through whatever your difficulties are. So reach out, www.quabbinbirthservices.com. Bye.